What's up, Goon Squad? We have officially entered the off season in the NFL. And while for most people, that probably means that you're going to experience some downtime, we're not taking any breaks this off season. We had a little bit of a layover to switch back to Sunday night. So we welcome those of you who are tuning in live on our YouTube channel right now. But other than that, we're going to go full steam ahead all off season long. We're here with the best off season coverage because of you, our loyal listeners. We'll discuss the NFL draft, fantasy football, and tons more during this off season. We're kicking it off looking ahead at the big picture for both conferences in the NFL. This week, we're going to kick it off with the AFC, basically just to get it out of the way because we know it's inferior football. And we kind of have a little bit of an advantage because we're 2-1 tonight, being down a guy. Normally we're 2-2, so we could just kind of make Rocco into a little bit of a punching bag on this whole AFC thing.
I'll be loud enough for 2. It's okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect any less. Before we get into that, let's discuss something that I think is going to be interesting. I kind of actually wish that Deal was here for this one because I feel like he might go nuts over this one, but this has been the hottest topic for like the last week and a half on the interwebs. How many holes are in a straw?
What?
Yes, this is the most hotly debated topic on the interwebs for like the last 2 weeks. The question is, how many holes are in a straw?
Well, I mean, I guess that depends on how you look at it. You could say no holes are in a straw because it's a cylinder and it has a top and a bottom. I mean, if you really want to get technical about it.
But the top and bottom are holes. No, the question is clearly 1 or 2. Like, do you count the top and bottom both as a hole or is it one long hole?
That's the debate. I mean, to me, it seems like a no-brainer that it's one long hole. I can't catch the logic of people who literally are like making threats at people's mothers on the internet and saying that like there's 2 holes in a straw. People cursing at each other over
First
this.
of all, I always understand making threats towards people's mothers. I always get that. All right. That goes without saying. Secondly, I would probably actually have to disagree with you. If we're going to look at it like that, I would say there's 2 holes because it's a cylinder. And it's top to bottom. The holes don't touch each other. The top circle doesn't touch the bottom circle. It's 2 separate holes.
It's so obvious that it's one long continuous hole.
That's one long hole. Is that how holes work? Holes. I see. Because I always thought holes had a beginning and an end, and that doesn't have a beginning or an end. The way you're saying it.
Like if you went into your backyard and just dug like a 10-foot hole.
Yeah, you'd have a top of the hole, and the bottom of the hole would be the bottom of the hole. There would be an end to said hole.
But I don't understand why, because there's an end to it, that it makes it a second hole.
It's got to be a second hole. There's no end because holes have an end.
It's just one continuous opening, though.
Then the answer goes back to my original statement. It has no holes. It's a cylinder, and a cylinder doesn't have any holes. Like it's either 0 or 2. It can't be 1. I think you're dumb for thinking it's 1. Wow. And I take this opportunity to insult your mother.
Well, I mean that's expected from you, but I don't know what to think here because I'm getting a lot of head shaking from Miles. So that's either his way of saying like this is the dumbest thing that we've ever done.
Hands down, this is the worst conversation I've ever been a part of.
And the fact that I'm getting really amped up about it is making Miles even madder at this point.
Yeah, because we should have been done with this 4 seconds after he said it, and we should have said, "Yep, the internet's stupid," and moved on.
I mean, ultimately, that is the answer. Is that it's so stupid that it's debated. Honestly, like these things catch fire, and like I just thought it would be fun to poke holes in it a little bit.
How many holes though?
2.
No, you just said it was 1.
Yeah, but I'm being difficult now.
I only took the two argument because you said it was 1.
Yeah, but now I just have to keep you on your toes. That's all. All right, let's move on from this. which I could definitely say that we would not have been moving on this quickly if Dio were here, because this feels like the kind of thing that he would be very opinionated about.
This goes back to what color is the dress from last year.
Yeah. And is a hot dog a sandwich, and all the dumb things that people spend their whole day arguing about on the internet. All right, let's talk about the AFC conference here. We're going to take a look first at the playoff teams, and we're going to go ahead and try and decide what they need to do to set themselves up for another playoff run in 2018. And I use playoff run loosely because, obviously there's teams that are one and done, but the fact that they got there is still pretty telling at this point. So let's start with those teams that were bounced right away. We'll hit it off with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, the biggest story here is, can they make another run with Pat Mahomes under center, or are they looking at taking a step back now after moving on from Alex Smith?
I think they can make another run with Mahomes if Andy Reid remembers Kareem Hunt. We're beating a dead horse at this point. I feel like this is the fifth or sixth time in the last few weeks that I've had to talk about this, and not I, but many, many people on many, many football platforms. But the guy's a monster, and you were able to kind of get away from him throughout the 2017 season because Alex Smith had the best season of his career. He was playing lights out. Tyreek Hill's really figuring out how to play receiver. Travis Kelce is what he is. So you could lean on the passing game a little bit more. I have full faith that Mahomes is the truth. I really like him, but at the same time, it's probably going to take a little bit of growing pains for him to figure out, his full potential. So if Andy's willing to lean on Kareem Hunt for the first few weeks, then I don't see why not. They're still going to be in an advantageous defense. They still have those skill players I just mentioned. I'm a little nervous because I think the West as a whole is going to be a lot better in 2018 than they were this past year. But if Mahomes can figure it out while Andy leans on Kareem Hunt, then yeah, I think they can.
I'm glad you answered that way. I'm going to talk about Alex Smith for a couple of seconds here, which I know everybody hates to do, but in 5 years in Kansas City, he had 50 wins. That's 10 per year. He had 33 picks. That's only 6 per year, 6.6 if you want to get technical. So less than 7 picks per year. So you can say what you want about his abilities to, once the playoffs are at hand, but the dude just wins in the regular season. Now, I know that's kind of why they're moving on from him, because they can't win in the postseason. But if you don't think that there's going to be some growing pains with Patrick Mahomes, who is not the same type of quarterback that Alex Smith is, I just think that's a little naive. Like, Patrick Mahomes, by all accounts, is more of a deep ball passer, more of a quote unquote, South loves this word, more of a gunslinger, if you will. Like South, So I just think that they're definitely, unfortunately, going to take a step back. And I know we'll talk about this more later, but I think they're in trouble of a first to worst situation in that division.
Yeah, see, I think that the Mahomes thing is going to be people are going to focus on the Mahomes thing because that's what we do. We look at the quarterback. But honestly, as far as head coaches go, there's probably not that many that are going to be better positioned to get him ready. He had all of last year to kind of learn, the NFL offense, to learn the scheme, to sit under that Andy Reid quarterback, coaching tree. So I think he's going to be ready to go. To me, the biggest question is, can you add, maybe one more playmaker? Do something to shore up your defense, because the defense that we all keep looking at and thinking like, wow, they have a lot of good players on that side, but they don't really ever do anything to win them games. They've actually kind of been a liability to them most of the time. So I just feel like because of those areas, you're in trouble with your division, because the Broncos are hypothetically maybe a quarterback away. The Chargers seem to be, on the upswing. And then I think the Raiders probably underachieved last year. So I do think that they're in trouble just from the perspective that they don't have a ton of cap room. They don't have a lot of expiring contracts or anything. So they're going to be the same team, basically. I just don't think it's going to hold up for them in that division. It seems like one of the more competitive divisions in football.
I think one like important note here is like, as for all the players that they do have on that defense, they still give up a ton of yards. And this is a team that, I mean, basically due to injury, but aside from Eric Berry and Marcus Peters, they don't have a whole lot in the secondary. I mean, they were trying out Darrelle Revis for the second half of the season last year after basically nobody signed him for, nobody thought he was worth anything for the entire time, up until like week 8 or 9, whenever it was they signed him. So, I mean, that team needs some help on the defensive side to begin with. They got to give up less yards because obviously yards leads the points, but they got to give up less yards. And then on top of it, like I said, the whole Pat Mahomes thing just scares me a little bit.
And on that note, I'll just touch on, I saw an interesting rumor earlier today, actually, that it's possible Marcus Peters is going to be on the trade block here this offseason. His act has completely worn thin. So they did trade for Kendall Fuller, which will help, but you lose Marcus Peters. That's tough.
Yeah, I think the one thing that does benefit them, he is just a stud cornerback, but I mean, they're not getting it done with him. So if you can get enough in return,
right,
that maybe you somehow get better elsewhere, I think it's worth it, especially considering that he's kind of a loose cannon. I'm not sure that you really need that around, especially at that position. So, all right, let's look at the Buffalo Bills. Surprising, maybe, playoff appearance this past year, an ugly playoff exit in Jacksonville. They're likely a candidate for a new quarterback this offseason. If you're the Bills, would you package your draft picks, and they've got 5 in the first 2 rounds, to maybe move up and get one of these quarterbacks at the top? Is that going to make a difference for you? Or are you looking more toward the veteran quarterback route?
This is like a really walking the fence answer, but the Buffalo's actually in a great position. If you ask me, they don't have to make their decision right now. Like they can test the markets and they say, okay, if we really like Kirk Cousins, let's see if we can go out and make a run at him. If we can't get him because of financial aspects, we see what happens down the AJ McCarron trail, or anybody else who might become available. You got the 3-headed monster in Minnesota. Something's gonna happen with those 3. See what happens with those 3 quarterbacks, and then if the market doesn't play the way you want it to, now you have all the draft capital in the world to make your decision on who is our guy going forward. You know what I mean? So even though they don't pick in the top 10, they actually are in a pretty good place right now. They have enough cap space to at least make a run at a veteran, see what's out there, and then if not, figure out which guy is yours and package up to go get him.
I wouldn't do it. I've been on record already, and till our April in our podcast, I'm going to be on record. This class isn't that great at the top. It's just not. Every one of these guys has a major question mark, regardless of what it is. Listen, Josh Rosen, by all accounts, has every ounce of talent and intelligence that any quarterback's had coming out in years, but he's a jerk. Like, I don't know how much he cares to play and win football games other than pushing his own agenda. Darnold, release, sucks. Baker Mayfield, who knows what he's going to be. Josh Allen can't complete a pass if his life depended on it. He's got like a 58% completion. These guys aren't worth trading 2 picks for just to try to do it now. They're much better off going out in the veteran free agent market and using those 5 picks in the top 2 rounds to get 5 actually really, really good players.
Yeah, I'm gonna correct myself because I was looking at the wrong line on my sheet. It's 5 picks in the first 2 days, right, is what I want to emphasize. So, and when you're sitting at 21 and 22, you kind of have the luxury of just kind of sit back and wait at that point and see what might fall to you. Because if you take a quarterback who falls to you, if you're interested in a Lamar Jackson at that point at 21 or 22, you're going to take a lot less heat if you potentially miss with one of those guys, because you have another pick right there sandwiched on top to hit. And not that you want to miss on any picks, but it's especially stinging when you miss on a quarterback. especially if you were to package your picks and move up and take one of these guys at the top that everybody and their mother, so to speak, here will tell you that we really don't have any idea what to expect from these guys. So you're adding all of the extra pressure there.
And especially because 21 and 22 is not going to get it done.
No.
You're not trading 21 and 22 to go to 4.
No.
Okay, so
it's going to cost more than that.
All right, let's give. I mean, we're speaking completely hypotheticals here, but I want to know your opinion on this one. Let's say it gets to like the same point it was last year, and they've decided that Allen is their guy, and now it's like pick 11. Now it's not going to cost you both your first rounders. Are you willing to trade a 1 this year and maybe even a second this year to go up 10 spots? Because you're the guy that says all the time, if you think it's your guy, you do what you got to do to go get your guy.
Correct, and I buy that with every fiber of my being, but I don't trust the GM that thinks Josh Allen's your guy. Yeah. So that's beside the point. I know that's not your full point. Listen, if you're trading to 11, 12, and it doesn't cost you as much, then that's a little bit of a different story for me. But I just, the way I feel about this class, admittedly not as deep into the study as I usually am, because if you haven't heard, my team went on a little playoff run this year. So I haven't been quite as bought into the offseason.
I did hear that.
I like Lamar Jackson. I like Mason Rudolph. I like Mike White. I like what's the kid, Loretta, or I can't remember his name right now on the spot, but there's a couple of them that for me have just the same question marks as these studs, but I don't have to trade assets to go get them.
Yeah.
So do you trust your quarterback coach or not with Mason Rudolph or to turn Lamar Jackson into what he could be, Michael Vick with a better arm? I mean, that's ridiculous. Better accuracy, I should say. Or do you really need to trade up and hope Josh Rosen wants to play for you? Or hope Sam Darnold taking 6 seconds to get rid of the ball doesn't cost you in the long run? I don't know.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening here is they take a low-risk chance on one of these veteran guys and then end up drafting a guy a little bit deeper who might be considered more of a project, but then you don't have to rush to get him on the field either. So I think that this would be a totally different scenario. Imagine if McDermott doesn't make the decision to throw Peterman into a game this year, and it doesn't go the way that it does. Are we even considering a quarterback for them at this point? Maybe, Peterman's not shattered. Maybe we're still feeling pretty high on him. So, and who knows? He could still potentially be the guy, if they do the right things to get get him back. But ultimately, I think that the right route for them is just kind of stand pat, make one of those lower impact veteran signings of a guy who can start for you, who can be productive for you, and then get a young guy that you can develop behind the scenes. I think that's what you have to do. There's way too much talk about the Bills, being a candidate for that number 3 pick. It would just cost way too much and be way too risky, in my opinion.
I will say that I unfortunately, it did happen the way it did. I think Nate Peterman is broken. I don't think you can. You got to be a special kind of person to come back from that. And I don't know if he is. So I think they have to move on in one way or another.
Yeah, I'm not getting rid of him from my roster, but I do agree that it's going to be a long road back for the damage that was done, I think. So, all right, let's talk about some teams who exited in the divisional round of the playoffs, and we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. On paper, this should be a team that absolutely contends for a Super Bowl next year. They don't have a lot of glaring holes on their roster. Some of their ownership might tell you otherwise this past week, but what are you looking at doing this offseason if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers to make sure that you are right back in the thick of things and maybe making that jump over 1 or 2 teams who might be ahead of you? Are you looking at a long-term quarterback this offseason because of how Roethlisberger is?
I think I am. But, I mean, to answer the question initially, what do they do to make sure that – Lev Bell needs to be back. Must.
Yeah.
Must be back. Figure it out. Swallow your pride. Long-term deal. This guy's a monster. But if I'm Pittsburgh, absolutely. I mean, is Joshua Dobbs the guy for your future? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Being an SEC fan, I've seen enough of him that he's just a guy. He'll be that guy. He'll be a backup till he's 38 and then retire. And we're going to be like, wow, he played that long.
Yeah.
He'll be that guy, and that's fine. But
played 18 years with like 17 games.
Right. But the people of Pittsburgh, and on top of that, obviously, more importantly, the staff and front office and players, they're not going to be okay with, if this is Ben's last hurrah, then just going back to that 5-11, 4-12 till we find the next guy. They've got to do it now because they can learn a little bit from Ben. He's had just a little bit of success in the league. So I'm not going to be surprised at all. Maybe not the first round, but if Pittsburgh's second round picks a quarterback, I won't be surprised for a second if the right guy falls.
I think even second might be a little high because second. I mean, everybody understands that if Pittsburgh drafts a quarterback at this point, it's to be a backup groom type guy. The same way like it was when New England took Garoppolo in the second.
Right.
Like it was like, all right, well, this guy's going to be, our potential future. He's not going to be our now. So, right. I mean, it doesn't come with the same stigma of, a quarterback drafted in the top 2 rounds.
But I guess my point is, where's Pittsburgh's gigantic need that second round pick has to be a player that sets them over the top.
Oh, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, whereas maybe we can look at, instead of getting a corner that may or may not work out for us and we don't really, really need it, we could secure a guy that makes sure we're a winning franchise for another 10 years.
Yeah. I'll agree with you. I love we'll call it the second tier of this quarterback class in terms of being able to develop them for the future. Mike White, Luke Falk, a guy you didn't mention before, I think would be a great fit in Pittsburgh, size-wise, arm strength-wise, all that kind of stuff. But, there's such a good second group of guys that you can develop that it doesn't make sense to not try and go out and do it this year. It's not like an extremely over-talented class, but a good group of guys that if you get the right one, you can develop them for the future for sure. I do find it interesting, though, and you said, you got to have Lev back. I agree with you, but this is just a huge talk right now about him resetting the running back market. And we've been talking at length with each other, and I know we've discussed on pods about, the running back making a comeback and whatnot. Do you think we're going to see the point where the running back gets paid? I mean, if Lev gets 17 or mid-teens, we'll say, because essentially that's where he wants to be, essentially resetting the market completely, because I think the top guy now is at Shady McCoy's at like 8 or so. So you're essentially going to like if he gets 15, you're going to double what Shady McCoy's at right now. Is that going to set back everybody else?
I bet they can come to some kind of it's got to be less, but we'll guarantee more or something like that, because they're not going to pay the guy double. That's a dangerous precedent, because as much I miss their running back, I don't want my team to ever pay a running back $15 million a year. Ever.
Well, that's the problem, is that there's most of the play. There's more and more we're getting guys that are elite type guys like Bell, but I mean you can't pay a quarterback 30 and pay a running back 17 to 20. Like, you just can't.
Right.
So
and that's the point. So I don't.
I mean, by all accounts, he turned down 12 for 4 last year. You know what I mean? And then he played under the tag and got what, 13? So he's going to ask for he's going to demand at least 13.
Yeah, it's interesting, their situation, because I do think they want to get something done, but they're going to have to make cuts elsewhere in order to make that happen. I think they have I'm looking at it now, they have $7 million of space as it stands right now. Obviously a lot of things can change between now and, to the point where they're looking at putting a deal together, but that it's imperative to me that Bell comes back. I mean, he's a special player. I know we kind of throw that term around a lot, but that team without Lev Bell is just not nearly the same. And you could say the same thing for Antonio Brown, but he's not the concern right now. So I don't know. I mean, if you really want to nitpick the draft, like, they really need to be able to stop the run. You could work on that in the draft, but I think you're going to have options there. a little bit deeper. So to me, this is the year. I know Roethlisberger went from last year, he was contemplating retirement, and this year he's saying he wants to play 3 more seasons. And I just think that he's dramatic. I think you have no idea what's going to happen with him. He could get knocked around a whole bunch this season, and then next offseason just be like, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. So you have to set yourself up. And I think that this is the time to do it, just because, he's not getting any younger. He's not getting any healthier. Like, this is a guy who's been playing for a long time and been getting beat up for a long time. So this team without Roethlisberger is probably not a playoff team. You've got to set yourself up to keep yourself a perennial contender, like Miles said before. All right, the Tennessee Titans were another team that was bounced in the second round. Is the new coaching staff enough to put the young talent on this team over the top, or is this a team that is heading for a slide? I see you laughing already.
It's just, they're the embodiment of why I don't know. I really don't like the Titans. And then when you say like they made the second round of the AFC playoffs, I rest my case on why the AFC is pointless. But to answer your question, no, I don't like the hire at all. At all. I mean, I have a personal preference of offensive head coaches anyhow. I think their personality that it takes to be an offensive coach fits a little bit better with being a head coach. For me, it's not all fire and brimstone all the time. And obviously, Bill Belichick's laughing in my face. Defensive coach can work. I'm not saying it can't work, but you look at Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator in Buffalo, killed it. As a defensive coordinator now in Philadelphia, doing great. That little middle ground where he's the head coach of the Lions and they didn't win a single game all year, that hurts. So I don't love the defensive guy. But then on top of that, I watched his introductory press conference, Vrabel, and it was a big joke to him. And I don't, maybe that works. Maybe the personality fits well with what the team has, but he just didn't seem to take it seriously or treat it like the responsibility it is. And maybe it's not my place to judge. I don't know. But you asked the question, so I'm going to answer. I think they're in for a huge fall, even if we ignore the fact that talent-wise, they're the worst team in that division once Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson come back. But I think they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope they prove me wrong because of my love for Marcus Mariota. But other than his Patriots playing protege, I'll call it, what has he done? Like, he was the Texans defensive coordinator, and they were worse with him than they were the year before when he wasn't their defensive coordinator. You know what I mean? So, like, I understand you lost J.J. Watt. That's a big blow to your defense. But, like, J.J. Watt hasn't played a healthy season in, like, 3 years. So, like, They didn't make up. They definitely didn't make up for the losses in free agency. That's got to be on him some. And then all of a sudden he gets this job. Like, I don't know. These Bill Belichick guys are getting noticed and jobs because they're Bill Belichick guys. Not a one of them have done a lick. Bill O'Brien, I guess, is the most successful at this point. And how sad is that to say?
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
Romeo Crennel, done. Charlie Weiss, Notre Dame, done. Josh McDaniels in Denver, done. Matt Patricia in the Lions, done. It hasn't even started yet. It's done. Like, it's just these guys, these Bill Belichick proteges don't generally work out. Like, so listen, I hope they have enough talent on the team to make up for his lack of ability, and I don't think they do. So,
honestly, the only thing I think could really help them, and I think this is definitely possible, is if Corey Davis makes the leap. Pure talent-wise, he absolutely has what it takes to be a top 10 receiver in the league. Yeah. Obviously, Mariota's a stud, and Derrick Henry's a stud, so they have some pieces. But if Corey Davis can loosen up the defenses they play and let that run game pound at it, that can help. I won't be all negative about Tennessee.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if the offense can be good enough to overcome Vrabel's inadequacies, you know what I mean? Then maybe, that would be my only hope.
Yeah, see, like, I'm not going to be negative about the Titans either. Like I laughed because, look, I'm not hype on the Mike Vrabel hiring at all. And I thought, what in the world are they doing? Like, you need a guy who's going to go ahead and develop Mariota, try and get this offense rolling, take the training wheels off, so to speak, on some of these players and see what you really have. And then I kind of let it unfold over the next couple of weeks. And I really ironically like what they did with the rest of their coaching staff. Like, they brought over Matt LaFleur as their offensive coordinator. He was just working with the Rams last season. Supposedly, he was one of the biggest pieces in having Jared Goff take that jump this past year. I'm not going to take away from McVay at all, because I think he was the majority of it. But to have a guy sitting under him who was just part of that has to be helpful. And then Vrabel, he just came over as a defensive coordinator, but he hired Dean Pease, who is a strong defensive mind as well. So, they're not flashy names, but they're also not guys that are just like filling roles. And, even something as little as bringing over a guy like Pat O'Hara. He's their quarterback's coach. You're never going to know really who he is, but from everything that you hear, he was like Bill O'Brien's like right-hand man, and everybody loves what Bill O'Brien does with quarterbacks. So you've got to think that, maybe some of this has rubbed off on O'Hara. Maybe they put together a team to actually start developing Marcus and some of these other offensive weapons. So I'm kind of intrigued by it, to be honest with you. I don't know what kind of leader Vrabel's going to be. He would not have been my first pick, but I really do like the team that they've put around him. And you mentioned it with Corey Davis. I think he's the truth, and I think that he's going to have a huge year this season. I really do. I don't have a ton to go off of with that other than the fact that he's so talented, but eventually they're going to have to take the training wheels off and just let him play. All right, let's talk about the teams who made it the furthest in the AFC. We'll start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've had this discussion more than enough times, but with Blake Bortles now supposedly, as close to locked in as their starter as you could be next season, what's the biggest hurdle for this team to get back to the playoffs? Because on paper, it looks like they should be back there. They have a very good defense. They're pretty good on offense as well. What's their biggest hurdle?
Continued growth. Yeah. Mainly at the quarterback position. I mean, Blake took a huge step forward in 2017, but his MO so far has been 1 forward and 2 back. So, if Blake Bortles can continue to come up with games, I'd like to see less of the throwing for less than 100 yards and winning type of deals. You know what I mean? Make it so that it's not all the defense of the running game. Make it so that he has at least some idea that he knows what he's doing as an NFL quarterback. And if that continues, then that team is not just a playoff contender, but a Super Bowl contender. Yep. So, that's really the only thing. Every other piece right now is in place in Jacksonville, especially considering the fact that they can at least franchise tag A-Rob and get him back for 1 more year. Obviously he is a free agent, but that at least is a possibility. I don't think they're going to be able to sign him. I think he would rather go someplace else, but they're going to give him the franchise tag, and he's going to play for, $17 million or whatever the franchise number is right now for a wide receiver. I know it's like ridiculously high, so.
Yeah, because of that, I'm not sure they will. To be honest, I'm not quite as sold as you are that he won't be leaving.
I'm not sold that he's there, but I'm saying like you at least have that option.
Yeah, the option is there, but I just, as good as he was, do you want to put that kind of money into a guy coming off of an ACL when the rest of your receiving core is adequate or good? I don't mean to use adequate as an insult there. Like, I like Marquise Lee. Allen Hurns is all right. You saw some of the younger guys really step up. Keelan Cole last year, D.D. Westbrook coming up. So do you need to put that kind of money into receiver when you have options? I don't know. That's to be answered, but I thought you answered that beautifully. When South first asked the question, I'm not real sure because they are really talented. The defense is ridiculous. Leonard Fournette is somehow going to get even better than he just was. It's all about growth, continued growth, and quarterback, yes, but the whole team. I mean, if that's all Fournette can give me, that's not good enough for me. I took you number 4. He needs to be an all-pro. He needs to be what Gurley was last year, and I think he can. But as long as they continue to grow, man, they're definitely scary. They're scarier than the Tennessee Titans. I'll say that.
Well, they definitely are. Just something worth noting too. Marquise Lee and Allen Robinson are both free agents, so they're going to have to, if they want to keep one or both of those guys, they're going to have to pay out for one or both, or you let them both walk and go a different route. But
they've got to let one go.
Yeah, I would not be shocked at all if Allen Robinson is done there. You do have guys like Allen Hurns and
Westbrook's really good.
D.D. Westbrook, and these guys can play. Keelan Cole can play. I don't know that I want to have to rely on Jadon Mickens a whole ton in my passing attack, but you could address those deeper areas in the draft. To me, it's all about Fournette. Is he going to be able to give you a full 16 games where you don't have to worry about, should we hold him back a little bit? Do we have to rein him in a little bit? Is he going to sit this week because he's a little dinged and we don't really, want to risk it? Can he be a full go next season? And then with Blake, just keep playing loose. When he was playing the way that he was in the playoffs, he kind of was playing loose. He was having a good time, and he was being productive. He was playing more than good enough to get them to the Super Bowl. So I just think I need to see a continuation of that from the Jaguars. So just kind of keep that momentum going, what they built last year. Remains to be seen what they'll do at wide receiver, though. All right, finally, for the playoff teams, the NFL runner-up New England Patriots. We don't get to say that a lot, so I'll emphasize the NFL runner-up New England Patriots. Coordinator Matt Patricia is gone, defensive coordinator. But other than that, this team is going to mostly return in full next year. Is there any reason to believe that they're not a lock to make another deep playoff run or another appearance in the Super Bowl?
I won't. I've said this before. I won't bet against them, but I don't think it would surprise me if age starts to catch up with them, and they, make the playoffs and then maybe have like an early exit. I think the whole thing here depends upon Tom Brady. We've said it 1,000 times. They are Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, and then the rest of their team. They're not an overly flashy roster. They're not a team full of superstars. So what happens if Tom's, if at 41 next year, 41 years old, Tom Brady decides that the Father Time is going to say, all right, here's where we take one step backwards. You know what I mean? And then, that one step backwards from Tom Brady is still good enough to probably win the AFC East. Maybe at 11-5 or 10-6 and not 13-3. But what if they take one step back and now you're a 10-win team and go into the playoffs and face the Jaguars again? I could see an earlier exit for them for sure.
So you're saying it's Tom versus time?
It 100% the New England Patriots right now are Tom and Bill and Tom versus time. Because honestly, once Tom hangs it up, Bill's gone.
There's some interesting guys who are free agents for them. Nate Solder. I don't think anybody looks at him as an elite left tackle, but he's been a pretty good piece for them. Malcolm Butler, I would assume he's done there.
Yeah. Hit the bricks.
Just guys that play underrated roles too, like Matthew Slater, Cam Fleming, your other tackle, Danny Amendola, Dion Lewis, like all these guys that they use to just nickel and dime you in all these different areas. They've got all these little small holes that they're going to have to fill now. And it's not something that you've seen from them a lot. They've been able to kind of keep some of these guys and hold them over from year to year. So it's going to be interesting to see for me, with the turmoil that they experienced internally last year, whether or not guys want to start to distance themselves from that now that they see that, the end of this thing may be approaching. So it's going to be hard for them to keep guys around.
You mentioned Malcolm Butler. I don't remember seeing him much in the Super Bowl. What happened with that?
He was there.
He was there?
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing him.
I'm interested. I'm just going to move on. I'm very interested. The football fan in me is interested to see how they respond to the Super Bowl hangover. That hasn't been a forever thing, but it has been a very recent, very true thing. And the fact is, Atlanta making it to the divisional round this year is really, really not common. I mean, they bucked that trend as well as anybody has in quite some time. But we've also not seen anybody close to the Patriots' legacy lose a Super Bowl recently. So I'm interested to see kind of what takes precedence that, hey, it's difficult to lose this thing and then rally the horses again to get back versus we're the Patriots. We always go to this game. So it'll be fun to kind of watch which of those things takes over.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason. They don't have a ton of cap room. It's not like they need to do a ton either. So, they're probably going to do their typical trade back 71 times with their initial pick in the draft. And everybody wonder when Bill's going to take a pick. And then he takes, some random JUCO cornerback that no one's ever heard of. And, I think it's going to be a whole offseason of questioning. I don't think we're going to get any answers this offseason. It's just going to kind of be an ambiguous thing. And we're going to have to wait until the whistle blows in the fall to really see what kind of impact it had on them. All right, let's take a little pause here and talk about our friends at Gorb. For those of you that may not have noticed, and I don't know how you didn't, because Gorb is a movement that is taking over social media. I see it all over Instagram, all over Facebook, all over Twitter. If MySpace was still active, I'm pretty sure it would be owning MySpace too. I mean, MySpace is active, but if people were still super active on it.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is that really it? Oh my goodness. I did not know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that if you pull it up, your songs and stuff will start playing right
I'll
away.
have to check mine. That'd be crazy.
The point is that Gorb is taking over social media because people are buying in to the message that our friends at Gorb are sharing. And that is that in life, you've only got two choices. You can either get hungry or you can be hungry. And we've detailed it a lot over the past several weeks and months. Basically, that what that tells you is that in life, you have the choice to either pursue those things that you want to achieve and get hungry and go after them, or you could sit on the sidelines like Malcolm Butler did and just be hungry and just watch everything pass you by. You could visit them at ghorbh.com, find all kinds of great gear for guys, gals, kids, babies, everything. They've got all kinds of styles, colors for you to pick from. If you don't find something that you like there, Rocco will personally pay you back. That's how sure we are that you're going to love what you find at ghorbh.com. Get yourself decked out so you can be reminded each and every day to either get hungry or be hungry.
I love the subtle Malcolm Butler Patriots dig in the middle of our Gorb sponsorship, man. It did fit.
Just fit. All right, let's talk about the best of the rest, so to speak here. We're going to take a look at some of the remaining teams and divisions and look at just their general outlook for next year. Look, we're probably not going to spend a ton of time talking about the Browns. That's just a fact here. Like, we have no idea.
You made me talk about the Titans. Talk about the Browns.
I guess we can. But the general feeling here is that we're going to look at the division kind of from a 10,000-foot view here and try and identify some teams who might be, a mover next year toward a playoff run. Let's start with the AFC East. Teams who did not make it last year, the Dolphins and the Jets. Can either one of these teams be a playoff team? And if so, how do they get there?
The Dolphins, I'm going to just flat out say no. I don't think they're there. I think Jarvis is gone, which means in the last 6 months, you've lost your best two offensive players. I think they still don't have an answer at quarterback, and I think their defense is getting older. I heard a Dolphins caller call in on NFL XM the other day talking about how they might sue to restructure or cut him outright. Like, no, I'm not saying that that's definitely going to happen, but like, could you imagine if in a 6-month time period you lose your absolute 3 biggest names like that? I just don't think the Dolphins are in place right now for that. They are 3 ridiculous games of Jay Ajayi away from not being in the playoffs in 6 straight years, so 7 straight years. So, as far as the Jets go, if the Jets listen to mine or Miles's offseason, predictions for them, I think they'll absolutely be a playoff team. I say mine or Miles's because we have a slightly different idea of how it should go. But I think either way that it goes, it would mean the Jets in the playoffs next year. Unfortunately, I don't know if the front office is on the same page, which hurts my heart. So,
you say that, but I am the only one in this group that went on record already and told you the Jets are going to be in the playoffs and win the East next year.
You did say that already. I will give it to you there.
I said it as a crazy prediction. That does not mean you believe it's going to happen.
All right, deal. Write it down. Jets win the AFC East.
Wow.
2018 season. Look, I really don't think they're going to mess around with what they can do as far as spending. I think they're going to go hot and heavy after Kirk. I really do. And if they don't get him, it's not going to be because of the money. I'll tell you that right now. They can also afford to go after any of these top free agent wide receivers on top of some fairly talented young guys that they've already got at the position. Then you can use your draft picks to get one of the great running backs in this draft and then just continue to work on your offensive line if you need to, on some of these secondary positions that you might have holes in. This is a team that I detailed, last time we talked about it. I think they've bought in to what Todd Bowles is doing, what they're trying to implement there. So if you can find the right guys like a Kirk, one of these stud wide receivers that's going to be available, and they buy in as well, you could immediately turn this thing right around, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And like I said, like that, my plan that I've kind of solidified into what I want the Jets to do right now is I want them to go after Kirk and get Kirk, and then on top of that, then if you can sign a Jarvis or an A-Rob, that's great. Either way in the draft, if Saquon falls to you at 6, then you take Saquon and then build your offensive line in the 2nd and 3rd rounds with 3 picks there. And if Saquon doesn't fall to you, then you take the best offensive lineman, probably McGlinchey at this point, and then in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, address the rest of your line, and then grab Nick Chubb. You know what I mean? I think there's so many options because of the deep running back class this year that this whole team could be flipped over, like you said, South, in one offseason and go from worst to first. It's not out of the stretch. It's not out of the stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and they were kind of the laughingstock because of how they were just shedding salary and moving guys, but they were setting themselves up for this offseason. Let's make no mistake about it. But the thing about it is that they stayed competitive in just about every game last year, which was impressive to me. It speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, no blowouts.
All right,
Miles. Nothing.
No, I don't have.
You don't want to talk about the Dolphins?
No, I don't. I really, really don't. I do think the return of Tannehill. I don't agree with you, but we've been over that a million times. I don't think they're dead at quarterback, but I can't get on board with the Jets are going to win the division. Anything could happen, and I feel very differently if you can guarantee me they get Cousins. So talk to me in a couple weeks, and I might be on board with you, but for now, I think the right 2 teams made the playoffs out of that division.
Well, I think it goes without saying that South is saying the Jets will win the division. I think I'll even give them the pass. They have to get the quarterback that we all think they're going to get at this point. If they don't go into the season with Kirk Cousins as the quarterback, I don't think South still thinks the Jets are winning the division.
Unless they get Nick Foles.
I think it's happening. I really do. And
I do too. I do too.
And if they don't get him, there are a lot of nice consolation prizes out there who are going to cost you considerably less. We've already, went ad nauseum with Teddy Bridgewater, but you'll probably scoff at this, but Sam Bradford's going to be out there. You could make a move for Nick Foles. There are going to be guys who can win you football games if you add them to a talented roster. So I believe they get Cousins, but if not, they're not going to do terrible. So
I'm hoping that in a couple of weeks I can shift this jersey over one spot and put my Kirk Cousins Jets jersey right here. That's my hope.
All right, let's talk about the AFC North. Bengals, Browns, and Ravens all missed the playoffs. The Ravens were the narrowest miss of the crew. Are any of these teams challenging the Steelers? And if they're not challenging the Steelers, are they challenging for a wild card?
No.
Yeah. At least to the first question, I don't think any of them, not only are they not in Pittsburgh's climate right now, but I don't even think any of them has a real opportunity to have the type of offseason it would take to catch Pittsburgh. But wild card, yeah, I think so. I mean, we just talked about Buffalo and Tennessee in the last segment being the wild card teams. Hell yeah. Every single AFC team is in wild card contention, and including Cleveland, because if they have the right offseason, they're right there. They do have some talent. So, yeah, I guess if I were a betting man, I'm not putting any of these teams in the playoffs next year. I think it's going to be Pittsburgh and it, but I think they could at least have, especially Cleveland. I'm so excited to see what they do in the draft. As a draft nerd, like, are they really going to use all those picks? I hope they do for once, because it would be really fun to watch. Well, they have 6 in the first 2 days, or maybe even 7. I mean, geez, they have 7. They do. They have 2 firsts, 3 seconds, and 2 thirds.
Yeah.
Use them, man. Use them up.
Yep.
I don't know how you convince him to go there, but if they can get Cousins and then use those 7 picks on talent around him, I'll put him in the wild card next year.
Yeah, for me, I've been higher on the Ravens than a lot of people, and I do think that Flacco is nothing special. They just continue to just kind of like recycle guys at the end of their run at the wide receiver position and miss on guys they draft there. So it's interesting to see how they handle that. Can they get somebody to consistently run the ball for them there? Their defense is pretty good. I mean, they if you get your running back and wide receiver skill positions improved, you're probably like the 6th seed in the AFC, just based on the fact that, I don't know, I can get 10 guys and win the wild card next year. So
they almost were this past year. I mean, and I like Alex Collins. I'll disagree with you there. I think they finally have the running back at least somewhat figured out. It's certainly not going to be Ray Rice, Jamal Lewis, and maybe that's why we bang on Collins a little bit, because you hear Ravens running back and you want all pro.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not what he's giving us. But for me, you kind of hit it in a sense of, for how many years now have we and everybody in the media been shoving down it's a passing league, and you have a below average quarterback and absolutely no ability to scout or improve your wide receivers. Like you can't pick good ones or make the ones you pick progress. So that's a problem in today's NFL.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump to the AFC South. I think we're going to probably, all feel pretty similar about this division. The Colts and the Texans missed the playoffs, but I think we both, or all three of us rather, probably feel that these two teams are likely making a run if they're healthy. Am I wrong in saying that?
I'll disagree. I feel better about the fact that Deal's not here. I do think the Colts are a bottom 10 roster in the league.
Yep.
Now, are you going to make a playoff run? It's possible, because Luck did it essentially on his own already. But it really depends to me what they do at pick 3. I don't think Saquon's the answer for the Colts. I just don't. I would take Bradley Chubb and not even think twice about it. They've got to improve the defense, and I know that Malik Hooker is going to be coming back, which is awesome, but he's not going to take that defense and even make it top 20 if they don't get some pass rush and some front 7 help. So if they draft right, then fine, but I'm kind of taking what we're doing tonight as things sit right now with only reasonable projections. I do think the Colts with Andrew Luck are better than the Titans, but they're so far behind the Jags and definitely the Texans that they're not a playoff roster for me unless they nail this draft.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. The Texans by all accounts, should be at least maybe even a favorite over the Jags next year with Deshaun Watson healthy and J.J. Watt back. I mean, they're a better. I know it's scary to say, they might be a better roster than the Jaguars. Top to bottom. I mean, Jaguars have the better secondary. Houston has the better front seven. Quarterback would have to go to Watson at this point. Wide receivers would probably have to go to Hopkins, especially if A-Rob isn't there. So I mean, it's the rosters are so close. I think Houston would be a favorite for the AFC South. I agree with you 100%. I think Andrew Luck makes all the difference in the world, and it would not surprise me if they are a wild card team. However, they are the epitome of the other teams in the league that have top quarterback talents like that. The Packers, the Patriots. If you remove the quarterback, the rosters are not that special. They really aren't. So I don't like to bet on an entire roster of guys that I don't think are actually that good. I mean, T.Y. is nice. Hooker is nice. Whoever they draft at 3
T.Y.
will
is
be
really
nice.
good. Don't
T.Y.
nice.
He's
okay, exceptional.
T.Y. is
Dude, he had almost 1,000 yards with Jacoby Brissett this year.
T.Y. is
four targets a game.
T.Y. is exceptional. I'll give you that. But other than T.Y. and maybe Malik Hooker, are there any other players on that team that are a must-have on any other team?
No, I don't disagree with your statement. It just felt like you were glossing over T.Y. Hilton.
I didn't mean to gloss over T.Y.
He said
the ghost is the
he's
truth.
He's a nice player. Like
he's
awesome.
Neil would be mad at me if I didn't say this. The ghost is the truth.
But yeah, look, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said, just reasonable projections. They've got about $80 million in cap to spend, so they're going to be players.
I hope they're smart with it, I guess. And their picks. It's kind of my point. Be smart. Don't just throw $30 million at someone because you got it.
No, I mean, you need core position type players who are proven in this league along the lines of scrimmage. So if you're going to spend on proven guys along the line of scrimmage. Don't get sucked into this, we have to throw some money at Jarvis Landry kind of approach, like the Le'Veon Bell thing. Don't get sucked into these vortexes, so to speak. Spend it at those core spots where you've been losing games forever, even though you had Andrew Luck. And then you're going to see a world of difference if Luck is healthy, assuming that he's healthy. When you shore up both lines of scrimmage and you're not a pushover there anymore, that's where the money needs to be spent. And then you could, develop what you want to do in the draft. I think they have the right guy in the front office. I really like what they did in bringing in Frank Reich. It seems like he's locked in, wants to do a real good job there. So I think they challenge for a wild card spot. I really do.
Just imagine Andrew Luck with time.
Yes.
Time to diagnose. I feel like he's an all-pro quarterback, despite the fact that every decision he's made in his NFL career had to be made pre-snap because he knew he wasn't going to get to take a snap and then sit back there and look around.
Imagine that talent level getting through his progressions.
Right.
Yeah.
He may never throw an incomplete pass.
No.
He's a guy who literally, we were raving about his ability to read defenses, and he hasn't even been able to use that skill yet. So,
all right, let's talk about the AFC West. The Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders, all to varying degrees, seem like they're close at this point. How does that play out this year? We talked about the Chiefs, and we kind of hinted at how we think this is a strong division. What's going to go down here?
I'm going to
take the lead on this because I didn't get to explain my pick the last podcast due to flu-like symptoms. But I picked the Chargers to go to the Super Bowl next year as things stand right now. That by no means, obviously, does that mean that's going to be my pick come August or September or whatever we end up doing our official predictions. But for me, it's been 2 straight years now where you look and you have no idea when you look at the roster, when you look at the statistics, how the team didn't go 12-4, 13-3. But what I liked that I saw was that they used it this year to get closer. They had a horrible start, in large part due to the fact that their kicker missed 2 game-winning field goals. So they're 0-2 instead of 2-0. Give me those kicks back. They're already a wild card team, but they figured out how to take their statistics and turn it into W's. I don't see that slowing down. The talent they have is as good as anybody else in the entire conference. When you talk purely offensively, you've got Melvin Gordon and you've got Keenan Allen. That's tough to match. That's top 10 guys at both positions. And, oh, by the way, Phillip Rivers is one of the 20 best quarterbacks of all time. So you put that together with the fact that they got a guy in the secondary who consistently is at the top of the league in interceptions in Casey Hayward. Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram are killing it off the edges. They're one of those rare teams that has a pick in the teens but doesn't really have a need.
Right.
So they can use it on genuinely, truly BPA. I think, again, kind of like what I said about the Colts, but to a lesser degree, if they nail their offseason, they're going to be tough to beat, real tough to beat next year.
Oh, by the way, they have Mike Williams coming back. He was a top 10 wide receiver pick last year.
Yep. So kind of like we said about Luck there, imagine Keenan Allen when he's in single coverage all game. Like, stop.
Yeah.
Dude already has ridiculous catch games as it is. This is one division, and I'll preface this by saying if the Broncos go get a quarterback, okay,
which they will,
they will. I mean a good quarterback. Good so if they go, like, I'll put it this way: if the Broncos wind up with either somehow Kirk Cousins or one of the Minnesota quarterbacks, okay, if one of those four guys winds up being a Denver Bronco, I think all three of these teams are in the playoffs this year. And I think all three of them obviously finish better than the Chiefs, making the Chiefs go first to worst. So all three of these teams would be my AFC playoff teams. If the Broncos don't address it, then I still like the Chargers and the Raiders to make the playoffs in 2018.
Do you buy the John Gruden thing?
I do.
I'm nervous about it. And
I think
I always like Gruden.
I think what he does better than anyone. And maybe it'll be lost on this generation, but I mean, everybody who knows John Gruden knows that he is a crazy motivator. I think he is. I think he does have some good quarterback knowledge to bring to Derek Carr.
Sure.
Obviously, and if anybody would doubt that, they'd be silly. But I think he's a very good motivator, and I think that's what that team is lacking. They're young for the most part. They are inexperienced, and I think a guy like Gruden is the type of guy that can get them over that hump and get them back to where they were 2 years ago.
I think just to fight you on that, I think they played well beyond their capabilities in 2016. That's my nervousness with the Raiders, is I feel like they're going to kind of rest on, hey, we went 12-4 once and we only lost in the playoffs because Carr got hurt. But I really think they're an example of a team that absolutely did the best they could that year. And if they rest on that, they're in a lot of trouble because I don't think that's who they are at their core.
I don't think John – well, first of all, I don't think John Gruden will let them. But two, I think they got into this weird mode last year where they were like, well, we're gonna make Marshawn Lynch our focal point because we got him back and that's what we wanted. And that really hurt them. And when they kind of went away from that, they were a better team. You know what I mean? So – I think Lynch will be gone. I think they'll be back in the mode of someone similar to Latavius Murray. You know, a guy who will get them 4 to 4.5 yards per carry. Not going to be flashy, and they're going to go back to putting the ball in the hands of Cooper and Crabtree. Like it's how they were their best.
Yeah, I don't know how much stock you put into it. Off season is filled with people standing up for their guy or whatever, but Derek Carr did come out this week and say Amari Cooper played the entire season on one foot. So, I mean, let's not sleep on him. We'll see, but I
won't sleep on him. I know you will. You swore from Amari Cooper for the rest of your life last year.
Yeah, to me, this is kind of a cop-out answer, but whoever has the offseason where they cement their biggest hole, to me, obviously, is going to win this division. So for the Broncos, if you find your quarterback, you're a dangerous team again. But you have to do it without, exorbitant costs and risking being able to keep, some of your wide receiver weapons happy or paying guys or whatever. If you're the Chargers, if you could just shore up your special teams and then maybe block along the offensive line some. Like,
see what happens.
Then you're the team. If you're the Raiders, if you can figure out how to be more consistent on offense, maybe running the ball a little bit more consistently, or getting some of that young, talented defense to play up to the level they should, then you're the team. So, I mean, really, it's whoever wins the offseason as far as hitting on filling their needs is going to be the team that does it. So, and all of them are close. So I think this is going to be, again, one of the more competitive divisions in football. Rocco's got 3 teams in the playoffs next year, hypothetically. I don't think that's that crazy because they're all really good teams. They're all really close. So I wouldn't be shocked to see it. All right. Well, that's going to be it for episode 98 of the Football Goons podcast. We'll be back at you next week with 99 as we take an off-season big picture look at the NFC conference, the more elite conference, as we like to call it here on the show. In the meantime, make sure you keep up with us through the various platforms on social media and the interwebs. Facebook.com/footballgoons, @footballgoons on the Twitter, and right here on our YouTube channel. On any of those platforms, you can send us questions, comments relating to anything that we're talking about or just football in general, and we'll be sure to hit you up with an answer or a response as soon as we can. We like having conversation back and forth, so please don't hesitate to reach out for us. And as we get closer to episode 100, you're going to want to pay attention to the social media platforms because there's going to be some really fun, interactive stuff going on out there that you're going to be able to be a part of. So keep tuned with us all off season long. We'll catch you guys next time.